Lenin Ablak Gemara. Today's daf is daf Zion. And we had this whole discussion about if you decide that determine the outcome of the question that we had was that if somebody grabbed it, two people were having a dispute, one guy grabbed it in front of us, that person can retain it. And we asked, what about Hegdesh Beloy Tukas? What happens instead of grabbing it, he just decided to make it Hegdesh? And then we brought down, and what happens then? Because I mean, also just by saying to Hegdesh is tantamount to taking, if they're dealing with another person, like a Hedjit, giving over to Hedjit. And then we wrote a story about a bathhouse, which was questionable because two people were in a dispute. One of them consecrated it. So the Gemara goes back to this question, 10 lines from the top of the page of Zayin Aleph. My Havi Alodim Sus. Bottom line, what's the outcome with that bathhouse? Because all these Amoraim refused to attend the bathhouse because they weren't sure of the outcome. Toshma coming here. There was the similar story by Rav Chizda. Came for Rav Chizda, and Rav Chizda then went and discussed it with Rav Huna, Upashta, and he resolved it. Maha. The Amr of Nachman. Nachman said the following rule: Kol mammon she'ein yochel haitzir b'diyan. Any money, there's a dispute, and you don't have enough evidence that had you gone to the court would have given it to you. That means it's not really yours. Places that we don't know definitely it's yours. And hekdesha and a kaddish. Then the hegdish you make is not really kaddish. Because you don't really have ownership. If you would have gone to the Taita, the desert would have given it to you, then Hegdesha Kaddish, then it would have been Hegdish, even though the Poil, you didn't go to the Taita, you didn't take it out. But since if you would have gone to the Taita, they would have given it to you, that means you have a connection to this piece, to this item. And if you made it Hegdish, it is a valid Hegdish. Says the Gemara, how can it be? Rabbi Yechon said, goes out. So the victim, if let's say Shimon stole from Reuven, and Reuven did not abandon hope, then Shnei Michel Hagish, they can even Reuven, the real owner, had he gone to the Taita, it would have given it to him. And yet it says Rabbi Yechon said clearly that Reuven cannot consecrate it. And you just heard Nachman said that anything you can take out of the bezin, you give it to him. So what do you tell me? Just because you could go to a bezin and you could get a hold of it, you could make it Hegdish, but if it's not Yudashus, so you can't. So the Gemara says, "Misavrid b'mesusa metaltna skin and mesusa karka skin." There's a difference between something metaltna and something karka. By metaltlin, the ganav has it in his possession and not the nignav, so therefore the nignav is called eina b'shusa. You cannot be makish. But by karka, wherever it is, it belongs to the owner. So therefore, like the masusa is karka, the bathhouse is land, is property, and therefore wherever it is, it belongs to the owner. So that's why if he would have gone to the Torah, he would have won, then he could make it hegdish. The famous Kilian Shasov here asked the question. He doesn't understand why it's a distinction between metalton and karka. That's not the distinction, he says. What's the whole svara by metalton? What is the reason why Reuven cannot be makdish if Shimon stole it? Because I told you last time, Shimon is a ganif and he stole it, and the only way to steal something is to make kinyanim in it. So therefore, because Shimon has some ownership in it, and that prevents Reuven having full ownership to be able to give it over to Hegdish. but he said in our case, in Mesusa, not because it's karka, doesn't matter what it is, because they're both not holding on to it. Right, they're standing in court arguing about a masusa that's over there. Who owns it? So that nobody has kinyonim in it. So therefore, I don't care if it's karka, I don't care if it's metalton. Since both of them, neither of them has kinyonim in it, why can't the real owner be makdish it? So the Gemara should not have made a distinction between karka and metalton. Should have made a distinction between whether the gazlan is holding on to it, so he has kinyonim in it, or the gazlan is not holding on to it.
So it's a distinction. Is that part of why we're saying karka and else? The person who's taking the land doesn't have a proper.
That's part of it. That's part of it, exactly. Cannot transfer it. You can't move it. So he remains at Tzadichin. Everyone talks about it, Dvar Avram, and the whole Rich is going to have time right now. But this is an interesting question. Let's go back to the Gemara. Okay, new din. Two people are holding on to a talus. Adukim is more than oichsin. Oichsin is might be holding on the ends. Adukim means each one's holding on to the actual talus. Is then noitlad mokim sheyod megas? Is then noitlad mokim sheyod megas? Each one, when they stand in front of the court, each one takes whatever they're holding on to. And bashar, and the difference, what they're not holding on to, that's chelkim b'shaber. Machal Rabavu b'shvur. Rabavu showed, but it has to be with a shvur. What exactly are you swearing on? Big machlek is a shayim. According to some, according to Taisus, once you're swearing, you swear on the whole thing. Even the part that you're holding on to, you have to swear that it's yours. You're not just swearing on the piece between the two. And we don't say, oh, whatever you're holding on to is definitely yours, and the dispute is about the piece and being. They're disputing the whole talus. They have a kula shali. So you have to swear on all of it. The Rambam holds no, you only swear the part in between, and if you're swearing on the balance, is because of Gilgul Shua. Whatever you're holding on to is yours. And the only dispute now is the part in between. So that's what you have to swear on. But there's a thing called Gilgul Shua. Once you're swearing on something, I can make swearing else. So that's why you're swearing. And we had a machlekes of Gilgul Shua Mahatoyda Midrabban. Second one, right there, Maslisik, Tony Pal about Dodi, like Tony's, and then what you got there, so why does the Mishnah doesn't say that rule as well? Why does the Mishnah just say divided equally? Amar Papa, the top of the Kash, they're both equally holding on to the very ends. Equal. Amar Rashash, Shmamina, High Sudra. So already tell me if you're holding on to something as if you have it. So this handkerchief, by Kinyan Chalipin, the buyer, the buyer gives to the vendor gives to the buyer, but the buyer gives the vendor the handkerchief, and the vendor, and in exchange of holding on to the handkerchief, exchanges whatever it is. We actually have the Murnadorim that's Kinyam Naslahakis. You're giving it to the vendor, but you want the handkerchief back. But it doesn't matter. At the time, it's a good Kinyan. So if the vendor is holding on to the minimum size of material is 3 fingers by 3 fingers. If the vendor is holding on to a section of the handkerchief, 3 fingers, 3 fingers, even if the buyer didn't give up the handkerchief, so he doesn't trust the vendor, I guess he's holding on to the other half. Nevertheless, it's a good kinyan because whatever you're holding on to is as if it's yours. Even the top is since it's holding 3 fingers, the commanded pasuk dami. It's as if it was a cut off. The kani based on what we just said right now. How is it different? Get if a man gave a get to her woman, but he retained the string in his hand. If he's still able to give it a yank and pull the get out of her hand, he never really gave it to her. It doesn't matter that she's holding on to a part of it. If not, so we see that it doesn't matter that she's holding on to it. We don't say command the pasuk dummy. The Gemara says get is different. Hasam over there creases bin and says so they had what's a say for creases, not a say for creases. So because it has to sever, it has to be completely severed, no shaykhs to the husband at all. So therefore, if he can pull it back, it means he never really gave up the get. But like over here, you have to give by chalipin, and therefore it's good enough. But saying creases over there, it's not good enough. Big machlekes is showing him how he's supposed to give a get to a woman. Then, if the woman keeps her hand open like this, right, the man gives her the get, and then she clenches a fist, so now the man cannot pull it out. But if she wouldn't have clenched a fist, the man could pull it out. So l'chayda, of course, I'm showing him that's not a good get, because her closing the fist is as if she gave herself the get. Remember, if a man says to the wife, "Bend down and pick up a get," she's not, because he has to give it to her. Here, what he gave to her is not a proper giving because he can pull it right back. So therefore, they say that she should have her hand clenched before you gave her the get, and this is what you do actually, and you right or whatever it is, and you stuff it into her hand, and her hand is very tight. So therefore, it's not that she afterwards clenched her fist; it's before. So that's one opinion. The other view will hold punvaket, that the hand, because then she's sort of contributing to the whole thing, and we don't want that. The other, or machlek whether he changes his mind. The other one holds faket. The hand should stay open, but because he's giving it to her willingly, even if you close the hand right afterwards, it's good enough, and so on. Rabbi Tam learns that she keeps her hand open, but the string has to be such a thin string that even if he pulls it, the string will tear, or the get is so heavy that the string doesn't have the care to pull it. But without any assistance from her, it has to be all him. Okay, let's continue.
You talk about a string. You talk about get coiling.
No. For whatever reason, he had a string there, but yeah, yeah. Why Taki had a string? Don't know. Anyway, right. With gold trimming, let's say, it says in the divide. Like the gold is right in the middle. So what? You divide in the middle. Like the gold is nearer to one of the people. Now I would have thought, let's cut it widthwise. So I'm going to get most of the gold. Why divide it this way? You get most of the gold. Let's do it lengthwise. Or lengthwise, let's say we'll both equal. Talk about lunch. The Malva and a Leiba having a dispute. The lender and the borrower, they're both holding onto this document, a loan document. The lender says it's mine. You haven't paid me yet, and I dropped it, and you just found it as well as me. And the borrower says no, it's mine, and I paid you back already, and therefore I don't owe you anything. Now there is a chazaka, generally speaking, that if a borrower paid back, the first thing you do is you rip it up. So the fact that it's still existing stands against the borrower. But we'll see on the other hand, the lender is a moitzeh chaver v'raya. You just give it back to the lender just like that. So what do we do here? We have two different rules that oppose each other. A lot of machlekes. Two people holding on a star. Malva initially you've been offered many. The Malva says it's mine, fell for me. Umat you found it. Two versions there. Rashi says the version is tak, it's yours, but and I paid it you. That's why it's on the ground. You would never lose it. It's worth a lot of money. It's on the ground because once I paid it, then was more careful. He's a sky mashtar b'chaysadud. It sounds from Rebbe that you verify the shtar is authentic and then you give it back to the lender. Sounds like we trust the lender that the guy never paid. Rashbag says yach leiku. Rashim says no, you divide. You pay only half what it says. We don't know what happened here. What about that's machlekes number one? We'll explain in a minute. Further, what happened? Nafal yadayim. It fell into the hands, and right now the Gemara thinks literally it fell into the hands of a judge, not an ordinary person, but a judge. No, one guy says you owe me $100, and one guy says you owe you nothing. So we split. Moment of the suffix, he divided. What happened? Nafal yadayim. It fell into the hands of a judge. Found it. A bezdin. That's how we understand right now. If you more later will ask what's a bezdin or a stranger. Anyway, it fell in the hand of the bezdin. What should the guy do? Who should the guy before? At least both Malva and Labor holding on to it, and we said before, whatever it is you're holding on to, it's yours. Here, you're a third party. Who do you give it back to? You don't know. You might do the wrong thing. If you give back to the Malva, maybe the Labor paid, and if you give back to Labor, maybe they stole the money. The best thing to do is lo yetzir lama. Don't give it to anybody. Leave it till until somebody brings evidence one way or another. Rabbi Yossi says. Rabbi Yossi says that what the star is still a valid star, you give it back to the Malva. We'll soon see. In other words, we don't think that the labor actually paid it because Rabbi Yossi says if the labor would have paid it, he would have ripped it up. So in all probability, it goes to the Malva, you give it to the Malva. So two separate arguments here. Let's analyze this. He said, you verify the star and the Gobele Malva Kula. I understand. It sounds like from Rebbe that he gives the star back to the Malva and he collects the entire $100. That's written in the star. What do you mean? But the Mishnah says clearly, if two people holding on, you divide it. And we're talking about a case of the Malva and Loy both holding on the star. The less of the Masid Shnayim, he argues the Mishnah. He misunderstood. When Rebbe says that you kaim star b'choism, and then the Malva collects half. In other words, we had a ksubis. We had a machlekes. If the labor says to the Malva, there's no Adim around, the Malva has produced a star, and the labor could have said it's a fraudulent star. Prove it. The labor says, yes, I know the star is correct, but I paid you. So that's migui. If the labor, I could have said, you prove that the star is real. Instead, I said that I authenticated the star, but I told you I paid you. So it's a machlekes. If moide b'star shekos with tzarich l'kaimo, since he has a mig, could I paid you? And he said I paid you back. So then the Malva has to prove it, otherwise nothing. And the other day holds moide b'star shekos. Once you mekayim the star, then we are sadi that you didn't pay because you would have ripped it up.
You have to establish that.
That's right. The labor has to prove that he paid it because once you authenticate the star, we assume that you didn't pay. So when it says over here that the Rebbe says that you give it to the Malva, and it's talking about a case of we'll soon see, that the Malva now has the right to collect half because you divide in half. They're both holding on to it. When? So there's two possibilities. If the star already authenticated by a third party or whatever, some other bezin already gave a stamp on it, then they will haka yachleiku. Then what's it then? Shtayim adukim b'shtar, both holding on the star, you divide it. But two people holding the star, you divide it. Ki pligi b'she'enim mekuyim. They're arguing the case where the star was not authenticated, but the labor said it's true, it was yours, but I paid you. But Rebbe holds that you have to be mekayim. So then, as follows: if you authenticated it, then polig. But when he says give it to the Malva, if you authenticated it, is when Rebbe says yiskayim authenticated, and then you can only collect half. The if you weren't mekayim it. Late polish. He doesn't argue. My time chaspa ba'almi. But if you say you don't divide, If you didn't authenticate it, then it's a piece of paper without the label. The label could say it's fraudulent. If you didn't authenticate it, because he'll maybe such a cost it's the kindly, then the mother gets nothing. It's just a piece of clay, a piece of paper, nothing. Man commercial started. Who's the one authenticated started? The labor. How come the pretty? But he himself says he paid it off. So it's like it's very powerful migli. Then there's all kinds of levels of migli. Migli by Toyim, migli by Shosik. But here's a strong migli.
I mean, he'd be better off if he would have lied. He wouldn't have this whole problem in the first place.
Exactly. So the migli is so strong, so we believe. However, Rav Shimon ben Gamliel who argues, Rav Shimon ben Gamliel says, Yachloiku, what's he saying? Even if the labor you didn't authenticate a star, and the labor is the one who substantiated, once you substantiated it, we say that you owe the money, and therefore you divide. That's what it means. And we saw a major Mishnah ain't the kaima. If other guy the lane kaima, Yachloik is still divided. Okay, that explains that machlekes. The next machlekes between the Tanakh and Rabbi was not from the Rabbanim. The yadayin like tzilam. If I fell into the hand of a dayan, you don't give it back to either one. What's the if it fell in the hand of a bezdin or it fell in the hand of a stranger? And the stranger, who should he give it back to? To the malba, the lender, or to the leiva? The achat, anybody else, shemotz shtar, shenofel liyadayin, that let's say a third party found a star that fell down. In other words, there's what do you mean fell in the hand of dying? There was a stamp on it from some bezin that this is a good star, but now you found it on the street. You don't know if it came from the Malvi, there's still still a valid star, or the lawyer paid it up. You don't know. It's written there a stamp. Don't give it back to either party because you don't know where it stands right now. So Eliyahu comes, or until somebody brings evidence. You don't have to say.
There's no Hashem's Aveda here.
To who? Who's the balabas? You don't know who to give it to. Has names. How's anyone know? In all probability, you give it to the bezin. I'm sure the bezin had like a whole file of unclaimed, just like the Havdil you have in an unclaimed super. You give it to the bezin, but maybe like you don't give it to Malva or like that. And you don't have to say like Kosabem. If there's no stamp on it, surely you don't give it. Why? Because there's another variable. Costs a little bit lower. Maybe they prepared the document, but they never used it. I feel it costs me hempel. The mekuyim, even though it's a proper style. Why? The chashin leparayim. He says alamis. The Tanakh Rabbanan say you don't give it back because maybe it was paid off. Maybe it's paid off. And Rabbi Yosi said you do give it back. Why do we say you give it back? Because we think there's such a strong chazakah. The moment the labor gets to start back, the first thing he does before he moves, he rips it up into shreds. And if it's not ripped up, it probably came from the malva. That's Rabbi Yosi. He's not choshen leparoin, and that's the machlekes. The Rabbanan hold choshen leparoin, and therefore you don't go back to anybody. And Rabbi Yosi says loy choshen leparoin because it's an authenticated star. He would have ripped it up. Rabbi Yosi aimen harei b'cheskasei. But loy choshen leparoin, we don't think that the guy actually paid off. Says the Gemara, what are you talking about? Loy chayish Rabbi Yosi leparoin. Rabbi Yosi does not entertain the idea that maybe paid it off. Tell me. But Tanya, we looked at another price regarding a ksuba. Matzah stark ksuba b'shuk. You found a stark ksuba in the marketplace, and the question is, where did it come from? Did it come from the husband and he hasn't yet paid out the woman's ksuba, or there was a drop from the woman and she already received her money? Right? It's like a lender and a borrower here. Like the woman's like the lender and the husband is the borrower. Did the husband already pay it up, or did not pay it up? So we say this: this man shop balm. Much time. This man shop balm. If the husband says clearly, "Look, I never paid her out," there's no question. You give it back to the woman. It's yachs alicia, so she can collect. Ain't a balm. There's a dispute. He says, "I paid off. I paid it up. It fell from me." The woman says, "You never paid me back of it." Is then yachs alicia. We're choishes that maybe he paid her up already, or maybe he didn't. So we don't know. So what do? We don't give back to anybody. Rabbi Yosi says depends. The tachas baila. So there's no that Rabbanan say we're chashin leparoin, so we don't give it back to either one. Rabbi Yosi says the tachas baila. If they're still married, what are the chances that a person pays out his wife while they're still married? Highly unlikely. So if they're still married, yachzel isha, then give it to her because surely she didn't collect the ksuba. This armala in his garsha, if she was widowed or divorced, then probably she get the ksuba. Then lo yachzel, then we're chashin leparoin. Then we say that probably the she got paid out, and and well, who's saying this? Rabbi Yosi. You just said Rabbi Yosi, we're not choishes leparoin. You always give back to the malva. Here we're not giving it back to the woman. He says don't give back to anybody because we are choishes that maybe she got paid off. What's going on? It's a contradiction. So we have a few answers. The first one says, Eifach, you're right, swap the names around. Now what? That Rabbi Yossi is the first opinion. Nafal in our previous brayse. Nafal yadayim. When the previous brayse said, "Fell in the hand of the dying." Lo yotzi lo lama. Don't give back to anybody. That's different Rabbi Yossi. Since Rabbi Yossi is chashin leprayin, don't give back to anybody because maybe the malva already got paid off. Maybe he didn't. We don't know. Lo yotzi lamis. No, was chashin leprayin, which swapping the names around in the previous brayse. And the Chacham say give it back to the malva. Says your mother doesn't help us at all. So what do you tell me? The Chacham are the ones who say that we're not worried he paid off. In this thing of Ksuba, what did the Chacham paskin? The same Chacham paskin by Ksuba that it says that you found in the street. You don't give it back to anybody because the Chachin the Parayan. So just because you benefit of Yasi doesn't help us at all. The only machlekes of Yasi Chacham by Ksuba is if they're living together. Chacham hold in all cases you don't give it back. Yasi makes a distinction. If they're living together, give it back to the wife. And then that's when I agree with you, Chachin the Parayan. So they both hold Chachin the Parayan. So we gain nothing. So my answer is okay. Stark suva kula Rabbi Yossi. I can argue that this entire brayse Rabbi Rabban generally hold not chosh leprayin. Pre-brayse we swap things around. Rabban not chosh leprayin. And here the Rabban see to say there's no Rabban in here. This whole brayse of suva is only Rabbi Yossi. He's the one chosh leprayin. So what's going on here? The Chasudim has a few words are missing. If the husband says, I paid off, you don't give it back. I'm Chayshul Leprayin. Rabbi Yossi, remember, swapping names around. When do we say that? She's armless, she's garshish, she's widow. They're still living together, give it back to the wife. Share Rabbi Yossi Eimer. Because Rabbi Yossi says it's all one opinion that we're just explaining. So that's this particular price is going according to Rabbi Yossi. And Rabbi Yossi, share Rabbi Yossi holds. That's one answer. Papa comes along and says, faithful. Rabbi Yossi actually holds that we're not chosh leprayin. So what's going on about Ksuva? Why by Ksuva is he? No, Ksuva is different than any other case. Normally, when I worry prayin, give it back to the malva. If it's authenticated, give it back to the malva. We don't believe the labor would have paid it off. If he paid it off, he would have ripped it up. How come by Ksuva we say he says he give it back to if she was divorced? What do you call it? We don't. If they're still living together, we say give it back to the wife. And Rabbi Yossi, so Rabbi Yossi says we're not chosh leprayin. How come over here Rabbi Yossi says that once they're divorced, you don't give it back to her because we're worried leprayin? Rabbi Yossi said in the previous, but I said give it back to the malva because we don't think the labor would have paid up. If he did, he would have ripped it up. So how come over here by Ksuva he says don't give it back to the wife? The Gemara, if he's not chosh leprayin, yeah. The Gemara. No, so he says, yeah, he's guess. Rabbi Yossi the brain the Rabban Kamer. Here by Ksuva, he's not giving his own opinion. He said, look, you guys are chosh leprayin. You don't want to give it back to the wife. I understand. You don't think that their husband would have ripped it up straight away. I understand. But at least be made it to me if they're still married. Surely the husband didn't pay up yet. So the Gemara, I hold that feeling is I hold nami loy cheshin leprayin. I say you always give back to the malva because the labor would have paid it up. They would have ripped it up straight away. If the husband would have paid the wife the ksuba, he would have ripped it up straight away. I always say give it back to the wife. But you guys who say you don't give it back to the wife, she's still married. Could definitely she definitely get paid. And why is it? What's up? They're still married. Amy will say maybe we had this concept before. Maybe he gave her some kind of security, a mashkin, some bundle, that in case whatever it is, she has at least security, she can rest assured. Machlek is Rashi and others showing him exactly when he gave her the study. According to Rashi, at the time of Ksuva. According to others showing him when she lost the Ksuva, you now live together. So he gave her the dinner, you now live together in one night with your wife if there's no Ksuva. So he gave her like security. Here's your security till we write another Ksuva. So that's where Ksuva is different because of the Isser. Or the other time learned. Not that. You now live together. If she loses a ksuba, you're not allowed to live together at all. So he gave her till we write another ksuba. It's called a star of the irchus, a star that you lost. Give her this something. That's what other shame learned. Okay, so Ravina says some idea. Ravina says, let's go back and swap the first one around. Rabbi Yossi holds that we are worried that he paid off. Chashin leprayin. And the Rabbanan say we're not worried about Purim. Rabban say Rabban. You asked the question, the Rabban. Now we'll focus on the Rabban, but the same idea. Why ksuba different? Why by ksuba we say that probably you don't give it back to either of them. If you're not choshel l'paroi, give it back to the wife. Okay, instead of saying tzradi, which you could have said, he gives another reason. Mishum the chashin l'shtei ksubas. When she lost the first ksuba, right away the husband got the sefer in, and let's write another ksuba. And because he wrote another ksuba, therefore we're worried that there's another ksuba sitting somewhere, and when this person dies, she'll reduce it for the children. They don't know that she already collected her first ksuba. That's why. Word to ksubas. But Rabbi Yossi, there's not worry about two ksubas. Machlekes. Rashi's word machlekes, it doesn't mean, it takes agrees with Rashi, it doesn't mean the argument, it means the division. Machlekes, the division. Which is Shnei Madukim, I said before, Malva Labor holding on to it, we divide the star. How do you divide the star? Is only if there's two parts to every star. We had it by get, there's the teifus and the teidif. The teifus is the standard lashon, you're right, but also put in the names and the amount of money. The teidif has one thing that the teifus doesn't have, and that is the date. And very important, the date, because the date allows you to collect from property that is unsold. If there's no date on it, every lekech will say, how do I know that you didn't make this loan after I bought the property? Go prove otherwise. So the star has a lot less value if there's no date on it. So the teidif is worth more than the teifus. So when do we say divided equally, they're both holding on to the teidif section or the teifus section? One guy's holding on the teifus section. One on the teifus section, zen noitel teifus v'zen noitel teifus. Then you end up with the teifus and you end up with the teifus. You end up with the teifus. Yeah. And Rabbi Yechon says, Rabbi Yechon, you always divide. I feel echad odig b'teifus v'echad odig b'teifus. Seems like you divide it equally. The Gemara, what do you mean divide equally? But Tani, we learned Zen Noitel, we'll see what do you mean exactly divide. We learned Zen Noitel Ad Mokum Sheyodim Agas, that you, what do you mean? Why just, if he's holding on the Tativ and you're holding the Tativ, why should I give you, part of the Tativ? We learned before that whatever you're holding on to is yours. In the case of the talents of gold, if the guy was holding on to the gold section, there's no question that he keeps that gold section. We were talking about where the gold was in the middle, and they were arguing how we split it. But if you're holding on to it, whatever you're holding on, you're holding on. There's a document. One guy holding the top, which is traded. We'll see in a minute. Yeah, but the document, if you have the teifus without a traded, you will not collect Mushabad. That's it. That's it. You're good luck. When Rabbi Yechon is talking about, Rabbi Yechon is not arguing with Rabbi Yechon is not arguing with the Rabbi Lazar. Rabbi Yechon is talking about a case where the teifus is right in the middle. If Rabbi Yechon says you divide it equally, but if the teifus is on the top and the teifus is on the bottom, then the guy holding the top gets the teifus. The guy teifus. What's Rabbi Yechon's chiddush? The mekar of the guy by the chad. Similar we had before. Now they would have thought, I'm going to plug hocha. Let's divide this way. Let's say which wise I'll get the teifus. Why this way? Let's go that way. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Well, you cut the star in half. So what are you going to do with the star? The famous statement. Do I need it to be a bottle stopper? What do you do with a piece of paper? You cut it in half. It doesn't mean you physically take a scissor and you cut it. It means you sell it, and because you can sell a loan document to a third party, and it's let's say 80 cents to the dollar, and you divide that. Now, so how do we what can hold the tape? We're going to take it. When we divide it, if you had a star, I'm selling a star that has the trade of section, I can get 80 cents to the dollar. But if I only have the teiva section, I can't really collect from the kuchas. I can only collect directly from the lender. Maybe it's 50 cents to the dollar. We'll have the lenders because they're bankrupt. If you have the kuchas, there's so many other people I can get to have much better chance, much less risk. And this guy can hide all his assets. And Kera doesn't really think of hiding the assets because he's so far away. He's removed. So therefore, the trade is second worth 80 cents to the dollar, the trade is worth 50 cents to the dollar. So listen, the 50 cents to the dollar we both have together. I have a bit more value. So I'm going to take the difference between the teifa section and the teida section. That goes to the person holding the teida, and then the rest will split equally. Kama Shabbat, the lesbian. Yeah, we're talking about, or even the Malva labor, they have to sell the star to a third party. Yeah, but we say divide. We remember we said we divide. Divide the star. That's what it is. Okay, so that's really, we have to give value to this stat here. No, we're talking about the market value, and that's what we say. That's what you're getting here. We're talking about the case here, machlokes, when we said it clearly, when you divide, when Abshimim Gilza before Chulkin, the Malvin Leva coming to court, Chulkin, right? It seems like Chulkin B'Shava. When do we say Chulkin B'Shava? They're both holding on the Taif, both holding on the Taifus. But if one is holding onto the Taif, one's Taif, it's very different.
Why? That's
yeah. What do you mean? Yeah, but it's
that's my job. I buy these debts off people, and I go around.
That's what the GFC was. What's the GFC? They collected all of these weak loans, and then they sold it 50 cents to the dollar. But it was so weak, the loans, that a lot of them couldn't be paid.
You remember the banks used to get a letter with the keys to the house. People said, I can't pay the mortgage. Here's the cash.
Not in Australia.
No, in America.
Yeah, because America, there's no personal, you can't go from the house. Here, if you don't pay, they go after you. In America, you can't. Why don't being a law here in Australia would be a good thing. Anyway, so we say like this: with lesbian man, or if it has a man, you collect from Shabbat. Is you give the part in between, and that's where you divide. So Rashi explains that the Taifus, on the very last line, you sort of give a summary of the whole thing. You give a summary of the whole thing. So the Taifus still has value, because the Taifus is the standard text, and then the very last line you summarize the whole thing. The only thing you don't summarize is the Zman, the date. So that's how Rashi learns. The others don't have a problem with that. So then the Eidim are only in the bottom part of the shtar. That means the Taifus is better than the Taif, because if you cut it, the Taif has no Eidim at all. No boss. It's all one star. So the Taif is also one star. Anyway, so they have different explanations. Let's just finish the Gemara. Obviously, what I mean is the value. I'll prove it to you. The Amish says, you cut it in half. You have to do. He took a beautiful talis, he destroyed it. Holy kasher, why not? It's a big, it's just a big cloak. But if a young kid, half of it is good enough. You just wrap yourself around it. But Rabbi said before, we learned today, talis must have his gold in it. Hochinami the palgala, but you ruined the gold. Oh, absolutely! You took a beautiful golden talis cut. Holy kasher, the chazil blame lochin, little princess. They can also use a cut. Okay, true, but has value. This part of the Mishnah you're not going to get away with. It says in the Mishnah, two people riding on an animal, and the Mishnah says, they cut the animal half. Absolutely, just killed an animal. So, if it's tahida, let's say it was a kosher cow, so you sell the flesh. Ella tameya, if it was a horse or a donkey, absolutely, you cut it in half. End of story. Ella, obviously, we're talking about the money. Whenever they divide it, it means the money. Stop.